All right, let's get into this question about the contracting officer not having to reach agreement on every element of cost. So first, we're going to determine what the question is asking or the specific issue being researched. So let's read it. Where does it say that when negotiating contract price, the contracting officer doesn't have to reach agreement on every element of cost in order to negotiate a fair and reasonable price? All right, well, let's start pulling out some search terms here. So first off, we're talking about the contracting officer, right? We're talking about the contracting officer doesn't have to agree on everything, have to reach agreement on every element of cost. That's a very unique term there, and so I'm going to highlight that. That might be something a good place to start our search in order to negotiate a fair and reasonable price. So I'm kind of chunking these out because these are terms that I may want to search by. Now, if I search for the contracting officer, right, in the FAR, I'm going to get all kinds of results. And so I think I'm going to start with reach agreement on every element of cost. I think that might be a good term. That sounds like something that maybe that's the way the FAR puts it, and so I'm going to start there. So I'm searching the FAR, and I need to check the DFARS and DFARS PGI, so let me do that. All right, and I'm going to hit submit, and let's see what comes up. Absolutely nothing. All right, and this happens sometimes. So when this happens, maybe my search term's a little too big. Okay, so how about this? Why don't we start eliminating words from the search term and see what happens? I'm going to get rid of reach. Let's just go with agreement. Let's try that. Nope. Let's get rid of agreement. Let's see if we're going to hit anything there. Oh, here we go. Okay. So, and look at that, only 2 results found. That makes me feel good. So one's under 15.405 and the other one's just FAR part 15. So let's see here. This kind of looks very similar to our question, and so I'm feeling pretty good about that. And so I'm going to go there first. I'm going to go ahead and open that up in a new tab right here. And let's find out what that's talking about. 15.405. Now remember, it only pulls out the excerpt. And so, but before I open up the full FAR part, I want to know where it was talking about that. So I'm going to search for element of cost because that's really the what we were searching there. And so it looks like it's this sentence right here. It says a fair and reasonable price does not require that agreement be reached on every element of cost. All right, so this is FAR 15.405A, and so I'm just going to open up the entire FAR part here to get more context if I need it. 15.405 alpha is what that was. All right, so okay, so right here, the purpose of performing cost or price analysis is to develop a negotiation position that permits the contracting officer and the offeror an opportunity to reach agreement on a fair and reasonable price. A fair and reasonable price does not require that agreement be reached on every element of cost, nor is it mandatory that the agreed price be within the contracting officer's initial negotiated position. All right, let's take a look at that and compare it with our question. Where does it say that when negotiating contract price, the contracting officer doesn't have to reach agreement on every element of cost in order to negotiate a fair and reasonable price? So I think that this does hit it. My main concern is that it doesn't specifically state that it's the contracting officer, but I think that the contracting officer is brought up enough in this little section here, right? Both here and here, to make me feel like that is who it's talking about. And so I'm feeling fairly confident that this is answering the question. And so I'm going to go ahead and write this down as my initial answer. Okay, so this is FAR 15.405A. Now, when I did my search, you'll notice that nothing in the DFARS or DFARS PGI came up, but I'm just going to check it anyway, just to make sure that I don't get that wrong. So let me look at the DFARS here, and I need to be looking at 215.405, right? And so I'm going to scroll on down to 215, And right there, contract pricing, .405. And it looks like we have both DFARS and a PGI, but let's see what we've got. I'm going to open those up in new tabs. Okay, right like that. And this was 215.405. And I don't know if you can see this, but I actually do not have a 215.405. I go straight from 215.404-75 to 215.406-1. And so it appears the DFARS is silent here, and I'm also just going to check the PGI 215.402, 403. Tell you what, we'll make it easy, 215.405, and there's nothing. And so I feel confident that this answer is not located in the DFARS or DFARS PGI. Now I need to check the class deviation. So I'm going to open that in a new tab, my class deviation research or search tool, and I'm going to search element of cost to see if anything comes up. Nothing. I'm not getting anything. Let's see here. How about let's just make sure it's working. If I search for the contracting officer, I'm getting multiple results there. And that's great, but that's too broad of a search term. Let's search for fair and reasonable. Fair and reasonable. Now here, oh, I'm getting more. I'm getting a lot more search terms, but it does look like, well, we're getting 36. There's probably going to be more in here. Let's take a look at the first one. That's talking about evaluation factors. So as I go through here, I'm just going to be skimming and seeing whether or not these things talk about reaching agreement. You know, and that might be a good word to search too, is agreement. Again, I'm getting all kinds of results there. I want to narrow this down. How about, I think, did we search for every element? Let's search for element. I'm not seeing anything. Oh, yep, I sure am. Okay, it's starting to come in now. So there's 7, 8. So let's look at these. Okay. So should submit a cost element summary. That's not what we're talking about. Let's go down to the next one. That's the same thing. Cost element summary, not what we're talking about. The next one is right here. Nope, that's not what we're talking about. 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 That is not what we're talking about. And that is not what we're talking about. So I'm not really finding anything about this in the class deviations. Now, if I wanted to, I could go straight to a Google search to see if anything is in there. So let me just type in agreement on every element of cost, and then I'm going to put comma class deviation. Let's see if anything comes up. Let's see here. So I'm going to put this in quotations to make this a little bit more specific. And I'm getting some Course Hero stuff that I don't want to look at because it may be changed. But I'm not seeing anything else. And so I'm feeling pretty confident that my original answer that I found here in the FAR, right here, is the correct answer. And this is what answers the question. Okay, because it truly addresses the specific question that was asked, right? And so yes, I'm documenting my answer, and I'm good to go on this one.